AI images are everywhere you look. And from a marketing perspective, they're incredibly tempting to use. But once they become part of your workflow, they can bring so many ethical, trust, and ownership questions most teams have never had to answer before. So, just because you can use AI to create images, does that mean you should use AI to create images? If this is a hot topic you want to know more about, join us as we start discussing Studio. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have a topic that, well, we decided to break into two topics,
Yeah.
probably more because of the controversial nature of the topics than maybe the benefit of the topics. But today, Cole, we're going to talk a little bit about images in
Yeah, graphics,
AI, right?
imagery. Yeah, just, the visual stuff that AI puts out, and I guess, like, last episode, we did wireframes and layouts, so we kinda
We
crossed
did.
over
So,
that
I
a little
mean,
bit.
obviously, it'd be the natural thing. And so, this episode, we're going to talk about the kind of static side of it, which is, the visual imagery and that
Mhm.
graphics,
Yep.
logos, that kind of stuff. And then the next one, we're going to talk about motion. So, videos, animations, audio, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny because, graphics, images, this is, like, probably what people interact with the most when it comes to AI, like, scrolling through
Yeah,
social media,
very true.
ads, like, I don't know, whenever I go through, like, Amazon, like, all the images are that you see pretty much are just AI generated somehow,
Yeah.
and so, yeah,
Well,
this is an interesting well, I
yeah,
that's what
I
I
was gonna
think.
say my social media feeds are always, everybody's always got some kind of challenge going on, whether it's, like I remember my friends all were doing things where it was like a profile with a beautified picture of yourself alongside the like stats about yourself, or this last Christmas was very much about kind of the family portrait as as a cartoon type of
Yeah,
thing. But yeah, I mean, I would agree when you talk about AI, if people have had exposure in their everyday lives, probably the biggest chance is they're going to have done something with images. And honestly, more for the novelty aspect than anything, to see how fun it is and to be able to communicate and participate in a lot of these social experiments that people are doing.
yeah, and I mean, all the collective funding across the board of our economy that's going to AI, it seems like is, like, all of it going into, like, Genmojis and these avatars and trends, like, I don't know, it kinda seems like
Yeah,
that's what.
no, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
But
That's
yeah,
true.
there's definitely some, pros to using AI in this department. And there's obviously risks as well. So, I
Risk
mean,
is probably an understatement, honestly. It's
yeah, no, I mean, it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. This whole area of AI, the whole deepfake thing. Um, I mean, there's identity issues that are raised. I mean, where do we even start with this?
I you know, I don't know that it's an easy topic to start. And obviously, hopefully, the people that are listening in our audience are responsible business people and have kind of that business moral compass that you're looking for. But the reality is, even if you do, sometimes using the quick side of AI, it can give you costs. I mean, you look at things like deep fakes and things like that, and the fundamentals of it behind the scenes, and you're looking at like, people uh, using the likeness of somebody else and changing it, um, taking a scene and making it something different, combining images together to make them seem like one thing. I mean, these are all things that are very well known in the world of deep fakes and that. But the reality is, there's a certain amount of this in the world of business as well. I mean, people are taking images and bringing those together. And what happens if you don't own those images? So you're taking a person's picture that maybe you do have permission to use, or maybe you don't have permission to use, And now you're having AI not only use it for something that maybe it wasn't originally used for, but also altering it, so that now instead of the person standing still, they're shaking someone's hand, or something like that.
Yeah.
So from an ethical perspective, it's a very fine line. From a legal perspective, it's a very fine line of how you kind of do these type of things. And, the AI industry, that's what they tout is really the benefit is being able to do whatever and be able to do these kind of things. When in reality, you're potentially opening yourself up to a lot and possibly crossing boundaries that you don't want to cross.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds nice, like, on the surface, like, being able to do this type of thing, but, like, even putting aside, like, the legal and ethical concerns, like, okay, let's say and to for starters, I don't think that AI generated images are very good, usually at all, and,
Fair
like,
enough.
okay, like, I bet, like, in the future that they'll be, like, getting a lot better, but, like, I don't think we even want them to be getting that much better because what are you replacing let's say, like, AI image generation gets, like, extremely good, like, I think the cost of that is just, like, human creativity, that's, like, kind of, what makes us human, it's one of the best parts,
Well,
like
it's replacing time. I
yeah,
mean, that's really what it's all about in resources. I mean, I 100% agree that human creativity should always be there, but the reality is human creativity costs money. I mean, unless you happen to be the person that can do it yourself and you have the time to do it, you're going to hire an agency, you're going to hire an outside service, you're going to hire a graphic designer on staff and all that. And that all has a cost to it and has
yeah,
a timing. If you have your own graphic designer inside your organization, somebody who can do these, or maybe somebody who's really efficient at using, like Figma or Canva or something like that, that is more universal like that. Um, it takes time for them. If you have to work with an agency, like say us or something like that, there's a lot of benefit for that. But the reality is there's the back and forth and there's the time that it takes to do it. A lot of
yeah,
people are using these for things like social media posts and yeah, quick little things for maybe articles they're publishing or stuff like that. So there is a time element that I AI I can build this image hopefully the way I want it to in the time I want it to without having to interact with somebody else in there. And that to me is the big benefit of this.
mhm,
Because obviously you and I have seen when it comes to the creativity side, yeah, when you go out into those real fanciful, kind of more sci-fi-ish looking images that we see everywhere, AI seems to do really good making something kind of fantastical in that. But
yeah,
the
sure,
reality is, who the hell's going to use that in their business literature? And unless you happen to be that kind of company. So I don't know that it has its practical of application there, but I do fundamentally understand from a business perspective, it's about time and resources sometimes. And if you need
yeah.
something quick and dirty, maybe you do something that can do that fast.
That I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I think this is where you find that, like I mean, in pretty much all our episodes, we talk about, like, finding, like, a happy medium between, like, full on human labor and then, like, leveraging AI. I think this is an area where you really have to be conscious of that. And in the wireframing episode that we just did, we talked about, how it's a really great tool for, like, jump starting the process of wireframing AI, AI is. And I think this is, probably another instance too, where AI is useful for like, getting that process going. It can come up with like some ideas for you in terms of like creating a graphic, maybe even like starting the first parts of it. I know Canva has a, great tool for AI, or AI embedded into its tool. Um, but yeah,
I mean,
so
well, you talk about Canva. Here's the thing that I laugh at, and this, I don't want to go too far down this path, but this is just one of those things about kind of the AI trend in the first place is every tool has it now. They have their own AI tool, and it's just so nonsensical. I mean, from what you can do. I mean, obviously in the wireframing one, we tried using Figma, which did a good job of building wireframe, but then their images, who knows where those came from. and that because those were some of the craziest looking images in there. But you have all these tools and everybody's plugging it in there, and this is one of the problems. I mean, this has been a problem in technology for so long, is that everybody wants to do their own thing, and from the end user, that's so frustrating because it's like, what tool do you go to? I mean, honestly, that's one of the biggest points of our entire series is saying there's 500 flipping tools out there. Which one do you use? Well, they all do something usually are pretty good and they all do something pretty bad. But the reality is none of them meet that need well. There's ones that are better, but I mean that's part of it is, you know, I mean, obviously, we tested Canva for this, and I thought Canva's AI was kind of crap.
Yeah.
It wasn't very friendly. It didn't do a very good job with everything. And considering that Canva is the most ubiquitous, kind of marketing graphical literature tool probably out there on the market, it's kind of funny that their AI not all that great, in
Yeah.
my opinion. I mean, not in my professional opinion, not all.
This is, a comforting dialogue that there's all these tools out there and just none of them are
None of them are very good, yeah. Well, I
are
mean,
very good.
look at the backlash that's happened to the big dogs, the co-pilots, the chat GPTs, the Claudes and all them. I mean, all of them have major flaws in the way they do things. I mean, from psychedelic conversations to, providing false information to, being manipulated by people to give, false information like Grok. And that kind of stuff. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it. It's such a
Yeah.
frustrating
Mhm.
thing to deal in the world of AI. But
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, there is a lot of potential here, and there's a potential to use it, but you have to use it kind of in the right way in that. And for images and that kind of stuff, there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, the reality is for me to take 2 or 3 images and superimpose them on top of one another and, give them a fade and make them look more like a collage, but more of a natural collage or something. You can do that in the Adobe systems, the other design systems out there, but it takes time and it takes a lot of experience to do that. To be able to say, "I want you to do this," and it does it, and it may not be as good as a designer would do it, but it's good enough. I mean, let's be honest. People probably look at our social media images are there to try and attract attention, but there aren't many people that sit there and open up that image and look at it and, "Oh, what's going on here?" And, "Oh, look at this beautiful and how they did this and that." I'm sure there are people are, but most people are just looking at it like it captured my attention. So from that side, totally understand. But there are these lines, there are these things that if you're gonna use AI for this purpose, I feel like above and beyond, just like when we talked about content creation many episodes ago. This is an area where you can use it, but you also need to protect yourself and make sure that you're using it wisely. Because as soon as you start manipulating somebody's image, a product of a person, of anything like that, whatsoever, you are going down a very slippery slope and potentially opening up. I mean, you and I were joking about it, and I don't want to go too far on this tangent, but a number of years ago, we had we did a series called "Stupid Usabilities," and all of our staff would do things about things in real life that they saw that were real big usability issues, and one of our employees, saw these 2 toilets sitting across from one another. It was a really funny image. It was like, who's gonna sit there and look at one another? And, uh, this person did this big write-up about it and used the image that they found, that was a good representation of that. Well, that image ended up coming from Associated Presses and, what I would call a copyright troll legal firm tried to come after, be like, "You guys use this without their permission," yada, yada, like that. And, of course, I had to get a lawyer involved, and eventually it went away because they really didn't have anything to stand on. But at the same time, these are the type of things that people don't always think about. And I bring up that story not to say, "Oops, I made a mistake." It's that
You
kind
got
of,
terrorized by the troll.
yeah, I got terrorized by the troll, but you never think about those kind of mistakes. It's just like an accessibility, in there. So
Yeah, I mean, that type of thing can definitely, I mean, it has happened with AI, I'm pretty sure, right? Like people have gotten into copyright issues with AI, even with generated images, because it, pulls from something. Um,
100%,
yeah.
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
But yeah, I mean, overall, I think, the best uses for, AI image generation kind of tend to be the ones where, again, you are jump starting the process, or like the goal of what you're creating is a bit more like informational and not on like the creativity of it, and that kind of gets into our tool test actually, because made some promotional graphics for that blog that we've been working on throughout this series.
yeah, yeah. So like every other time, we tested 3 tools.
Uh-huh.
But we looked at them and got mixed results in that. So one of the important things that I wanted to do here was not bring in a lot of imagery, but use more graphics in that. But I kind of let the tools do it. I actually, you and I talked about it, that after the interesting process of creating, having AI create the prompt for the wireframe, I thought I'd give it a try for the images. And it was funny because it almost created the exact same prompt, but then it was going to use it for images. And I just felt that was way too lengthy. Nobody's ever going to do that for a single image type of thing. So I just kind of scrapped that and I kind of went back to it. So the question I asked is basically, again, using that Grammarly article that we had of our accessibility article, said create 3 clean and simple social media promotional graphics that highlight the main message of the article. Each graphic should be 1080 by 1080, easy to read at a glance, and use only text or ideas taken directly from the article. Include a short headline and a brief supporting line for each variation, and keep the overall design modern, high contrast, and uncluttered. So basically, my thing was create this, make it around something that was an important point from the article that AI learned it from it, and then also make sure that it's high contrast, so it's accessible. It has kind of a modern design and it's uncluttered. And overall, all 3 tools did okay with this. Some did better than others. But the first one I did was Canva because obviously we use Canva a lot. And that's something, for our own internal marketing purposes. And that's something. And Canva was probably the most mixed bag out of the 3 different tools that I used, because I used Canva, I used Claude AI because I wanted to use um, uh, the new model that they had just released. And that, but the one thing that I hated about it is I asked it to do this, and then it gave me a bunch of ideas on what I could do, and it didn't do it. And it was
Hmm.
like, this Canva's all about creating assets. And so then I had to go back and specifically say, please create me the assets, which just seemed like kind of an unnecessary, silly step for that to have happen in there. And honestly, it by far had the most boring designs. Now, these will be attached to the episode, so you can go into the show notes and get the thing so that you can see the designs on that. It did capture good main messages. I mean, it kind of captured some good main messages, so it accomplished the job of reading the article from there, which I thought it was. They were simple, they were clean and high contrast, and it did actually create a fourth one, which I thought was funny because I only wanted to create. Right, could have created a, it was kind of more like hype, like this is awesome, type of thing. But overall, I'm gonna go on the creativity scale very low from that, which is funny because I think of a lot of um stuff that we do in Canva and that kind of stuff, and they have all these templates and that you can use in it, and most of them are cliche-ish, most of them are very generic. Most of them look like they were generated by AI in that, and that's kind of what we got out of there. And so for us who would want everything to kind of have a unique, more custom feel for us, I really didn't feel like that did very good.
Yeah. You know, to mention Jumpstart for the third time, I think, taking a look at these graphics, there's maybe parts that, I'd like pick and choose what I do want to include and then maybe like make some other edits to different parts. But just like as a whole, the graphic, if you were to just post it on social media, it would be so goofy. Like
Well,
the
and actually, when I get to our third tool, I'll talk to you about something that I kind of liked a little bit more about the third tool than the other tool for that exact reason about the jumpstart. Because the one thing you can't do with Canva or really with like we use Claude and its Opus model and that, is it's not very good at saying, okay, well, take the image you did before and now make this modification to it, which is very disappointing. I mean, when you think of it from a design tool, especially in Canva, you should be able to say, okay, well, now use this as a basis and make these changes, but it just doesn't work that way in that. So
Mhm.
like I said, the second tool I used was Claude, and I used its new Opus, which is really, honestly, probably the best AI model I've found out there so far. I mean, it's quite good. Google's new Gemini model is kind of up there with it. I mean, in that it just you feel like you're getting much better answers and having much better interactions than that. The most interesting thing, and I've always appreciated that Claude tells you exactly what it's doing through the process of doing this, is it was trying to create PNGs for the images, and it was having a really hard time finding a program that it had access to convert things to PNGs, which I just thought was kind of an interesting side note. Um,
Yeah.
and then it used fonts, which actually looked really good, but then it couldn't find the fonts to be able to use them. So it ended up switching to just system fonts. So very generic fonts that,
Oh,
it
that's why
really,
it looks so like generic.
yeah, yeah. But overall, these actually look quite decent. I mean, their three images they did are very much just variations on a theme. It's all kind of very generic, very word heavy, lots of space. And that, I mean, it accomplished it, but overall, it didn't really give you much of an impact. If you saw these graphics, I don't know that they would really excite you in any way. And honestly, if you looked at all three, you'd think they were built by the same thing because they all three
Yeah.
kind of look very similar in that. Um, uh, there was a little bit of variation. Again, it pulled out very good context out of the article, which I thought was really good from that side. But the one that did the best was Artlist. Now, I wanted to use a tool that was more specific to image generation, and that an Artlist is, one of these tools out here that I'd heard of. And one of the interesting things is that you can actually access different models. So you can use like Sora, which is from OpenAI, or you can use they have some of their own models and that to do things in that and there. Um, uh, in that. So I wanted to use something that was more about just image generation. That was what its thing was, and see what it was. Um, so Sora overall by far created the most interesting graphics. It used icons, it used some different color contrasts, it used different size fonts, it used the space better. Their stuff felt more promotional. As a matter of fact, more meme promotional, you might say, that they felt more meme-ish and that kind of stuff, like something that you'd see on almost any typical, AI generated content and that kind of stuff. But there were a lot of things like weird, like you couldn't specify the dimensions you wanted. You just had set dimensions that it did, and that is kind of frustrating because you can't use it from that custom level. There's no way to attach a document, so I ended up having to use just a little short blurb from the article because I couldn't even copy paste in most of the article. So that to me was a serious deficiency in there. And then everything's about credits, and it was kind of crazy when you did things how many credits they used. It was like you felt like you got like 2,000 credits, but then like one image took like 200 credits, and it's like, okay, what the hell can you really do with this from there? So it really kind of struggled there. But overall, from a graphical standpoint, by far the most creative graphics. You'll see them probably ones closer to ones we'd actually use. I could see using a lot of these almost as is. And there was a really good variation. All three of the examples are very different from one another. They kind of use a little bit of the same pattern, but overall they have a very different feel to them, which I think is very big. Um, but probably the best thing about it is, and I experimented with a little bit, I probably didn't do it right, but you can actually, it has a setting that once you've done an image, you can say, take this image now and do these specific modifications to it. And it seems to work pretty decently. So that right there from an image workflow side, we're very good. Overall, the tools weren't terrible. One of the biggest things is none of them, and I didn't give them instructions to use it, but I also didn't give instructions to not use it. None of them used imagery. None of them used photos, anything like that, any type of impact, which most marketing people would probably want that in there to use a photo. So you'd probably have to say like, use this photo or look for photos of people standing or, whatever you wanted to do there. But I did find that kind of interesting that seemed to really lack from that side. And most of them, like their backgrounds were very subtle. I mean, I did say uncluttered, so maybe that's how they interpret it. But overall, the backgrounds, that just the overall feel of them, none of them were really dynamic in that.
It's probably good that they didn't use any like real images of people, because they were
Yeah.
probably fake, if fake people, or
Right.
if they're real people, like what are the ethics behind that?
Right, exactly. And don't get me wrong, I find it interesting because obviously everything we think of image generation and AI, it's about human form. It's about, making fake versions of people and that kind of stuff. So it was interesting that
Mm.
none of these tools did that. And so hopefully maybe they just have some safeguards in there from that side. But honestly, in the end, if I was to look at these, I might use one of the ones from Claude, but I definitely probably use one of the ones from Artlist. They're probably things we'd want to do a little differently, but overall they were pretty good. But I wouldn't use any of the ones from Canva, and that's probably the biggest thing you can take away from that.
Yeah, I would recreate some of these in Canva,
Yeah.
the ones from our list.
So again, it kind of goes back to what has been such a reoccurring theme. Your prompt creation, making simple prompts like we're doing for the most part, just tends to lack. And so it's really crazy when you think about it, just how much work people could have to put into prompts to figure this out, to be able to get a right prompt, then to be able to do things, which is why we've talked about kind of at the end of the series doing a prompt episode and kind of talking about that, like how you could potentially build prompts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've obviously opened up a bunch of rabbit holes with each topic we've covered in this series, but don't worry, we'll button it all up and get you on the right track when it comes to using AI.
Well, and honestly, looking at our time, we might have to stop talking about AI because we keep saying that we wanted our episodes more like 15, 20 minutes, and these AI ones, there's just so much to talk about. We're
Yeah.
just pushing it back and back and back.
We are betraying the coffee break, the promise
We are
all within the time of
afraid
your
to
coffee
coffee
break.
break, but hopefully people are finding value from it in there. So,
Yeah,
uh,
well, maybe 2 coffee breaks.
yeah. So, like we said, next time we're going to talk about video, audio, that kind of stuff, which is a whole different can of worms. We probably
Buckle up,
want to
everyone.
keep that under an hour in that to talk about that, especially when you talk about the ethical implications. But anyway, I mean, there is some big differences. We obviously did a lot of that testing along with this, so I think I'm going to go back and do a couple other tools, and we'll just say the results were interesting.
Yeah,
So we'll just go from that.
I'll
So
be here.
thanks everybody. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Just a reminder, we'll be dropping new episodes every 2 weeks. If you enjoyed the discussion today, we would appreciate it if you hit the like button and leave us a review or comment below. And to listen to past episodes or be notified when future episodes are released, visit our website at www.discussingstupid.com and sign up for our email updates. Not only will we share when each new episode drops, but also we'll be including a ton of good content to help you in discussing stupid in your own organization. Of course, you can also follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud, or really any of the other favorite podcast platforms we might use. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.